I have a couple of announcements too. What is so funny? I can't have announcements? No, it won't be questions. It's not going to be a test. The announcement before anybody is allowed to leave, they have to, without consulting the book, enumerate the 89 cheetahs, the 4 types of sense door process, 2 types of mind door process. I'm serious now. Yeah. Okay, very important event for those who are living in the greater New York area on September 21st. You know, probably the major problem that human civilization is facing right now is increasing climate change. And it's occurring at a much more rapid rate than anybody had expected. Even the scientists, the climate scientists, are astonished at how fast the changes to the climate are increasing. And so on September 21st in New York City, there will be an event called the People's Climate March. And it's supposed to be billed to become the largest demonstration on behalf of the climate in human history. People are coming from all over the United States, from other countries, even other continents, to participate. And the reason why it's being held on September 21st is because the Secretary General of the UN has called for a meeting of world leaders the following week, starting the week of September 22nd, to discuss the climate crisis. And so people will be gathering in New York for this march in order to let all of the world leaders know that ordinary people, even though the world leaders have continued to delay and procrastinate and fabricate and just settle for very small concessions, but we have to let them know that we want them to really take effective action. And so this will be a very large, historically important march. And in the march, there will be large contingent from the different faith communities, including many Buddhists and representatives from Buddhist groups. And so, you know, we have an organization called Buddhist Global Relief, which is dedicated to the fight of combating global hunger. And there's a very close connection between climate change and world hunger, because as the climate gets warmer, it's going to destroy a lot of the land which is used for growing crops for food, and it will be destroying the sources of water for much of the agriculture in the world. And so we have to work together to try to call a halt through change in policies to stop the escalation of climate change. So if you are free that day, I know that there's a meditation retreat here that week. The climate march was scheduled after the meditation retreat was already planned and announced. But if you're not planning to attend the retreat, and if you would like to join the climate march, then, and you like to join the Buddhist contingent with Buddhist Global Relief, I will put a piece of paper out here. You just put your name and your email address. Then I will give you the information that you need to register for the march with the Buddhist group, so that you get the information where the Buddhist groups will be meeting in order to march together. Okay, so that is one announcement. The other announcement also is connected with our organization, Buddhist Global Relief. Every year we've been having what we call a walk to feed the hungry. And we started this in the year 2010 with just one walk in New Jersey, bringing together the people locally connected with Buddhist Global Relief. 2011, there were 3 walks in New York City, Michigan, and California. The next year, there was something like 10 walks in the United States. And over the last few years, there have been 10 walks. If you're interested in joining any of these walks, the walks are in New York City, Connecticut. I don't see Allison here. She must have gone home. Connecticut. My mind isn't working so well. There'll be one in Michigan, near Ann Arbor, Michigan. Houston, Texas. I know that there's a bunch in California. I'm trying to go gradually across the country. Seattle, Washington, right? Then in California, San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles. Oh, I think St. Louis will be in October also. Did I miss any? In Northern California. I mentioned San Francisco and San Jose. Wait. San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, then Escondido. Escondido is it's south of Los Angeles. Yeah. That is between Los Angeles and San Diego. And I don't have the actual information about the walks here, but I have the flyers about Buddhist Global Relief, so you can get the URL, the internet address from the flyer, and then if you go to the home page, there's the announcement about the walks with the schedule of the different walks, and then you can find out if there's a walk near you, and then if you click on the name of the city or location, then it will take you to another page where you get more detailed information about that specific walk. So maybe we could put these flyers at some convenient place. Okay, we'll put them over here by Kuan Yin Bodhisattva. And then if you're planning to take the refuges tomorrow and you haven't yet put your name on this paper, then please do so. You could do it after our question and answer session. Excuse me? Yeah, the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. Okay, so let us... Oh, I have to get my... Don't look so searchingly at my handbag. No, this is not the handbag. That was to hold the flyers. Okay, so this is Monday evening, September 4th? Yeah. Oh, September 1st still. Okay, 2014. And this is the question and answer session. So please, I think I told Paul that he will have the first opportunity at a question. So you can take the wireless mic.
Thank you, Bhante. I was wondering, it's actually kind of a follow-up question to what we ended the last session with regarding the Bhavanga.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And actually, I'm reading here from, and I was wondering if you would recommend this too. This is the Abhidhamma in Practice by NKG Mendes. But he states that, you know, our past experiences are registered in the Bhavanga, in the life continuum, in a subliminal form. And I was wondering if you would agree with that statement and whether you would even recommend this. I found it a little helpful myself reading through it.
Yeah, I think it's a helpful, it's like a booklet, right?
Yeah, I have it here actually.
Oh, I see. This is a printout from the internet.
Yes, from Access to Insight.
Oh, I see, I see. Because it was originally issued as a wheel booklet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, from the Buddhist Publication Society.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's a good booklet which gives a kind of very concise overview of the Abhidhamma. That particular view, though, I haven't seen in any kind of Abhidhamma commentary, but it's an interesting problem. Like, you know, I don't see that it's actually addressed in any of the Abhidhamma texts. Where are the memories preserved?
Right.
Like it's said that, not to speak of our little memories of things going back to maybe when we were 4 or 5 years old, but the Buddha says he's able to recollect his past lives, numerous past lives, 1 life, 2 life, 3, 4, hundreds, thousands of past lives. Where are all of those memories?
Well, I like the way, the word I think you used was potentiality, or that somehow that potential is within that process. So,
Have you, Venerable Dhammadhi, have you come across anything in any commentary which says where the memories are stored?
Thank you.
Only through secondary sources. Yeah, there was a book published maybe about early 1990s. Let's see, it was called In the Mirror of Memory. It's scholarly essays on Buddhist thought by academic scholars taking the understanding of memory in the different Buddhist traditions, different Buddhist schools, including like Sarvastivada, Yogacara, Theravada. So it's a theme which I would say has not really been explored thematically or systematically in early Buddhism. I think the ones who started to give attention to the problem of memory were the philosophers of the logical school. This was a sort of offshoot of the Yogacara school. The ones like Dignaga, Dharmakirti, and the philosophers within that stream. What would be closest to the subconscious is the Bhavanga, but I don't recall, any authoritative commentarial statement saying that the Bhavanga preserves the memory impressions. But maybe some interpreters, modern interpreters of Buddhism, will ascribe it to the Bhavanga. Okay, Celine, you take the mobile microphone.
So a little bit along the same lines of the storage of karma, We were talking about alaya vijnana, and I'm just wondering if that would hold, if that would make sense, if you think of it as a sensitivity one would develop, not something that's storage, but more like the stream of consciousness develops some kind of sensitivity, or allergies, for instance. So let's say if you're allergic to peanuts, if you never encounter peanuts, you'll be fine, right?
Yeah,
But the day you meet the peanuts, you react to that. So could it be more like based on this, like the imprints that is left on the state of consciousness rather than something that's stored somewhere? Does that make sense? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, in fact, when I'm trying to explain concepts like karma, I will use those expressions like that the karmic actions leave subtle imprints on the mind, which then have the potential to bring forth their fruits. But one shouldn't take it like in too physicalist, even extend the physical metaphor too far, and to think that there is some kind of entity on which the karmic impressions are actually imprinted, or some container in which they're stored. But just once the action is done, until it brings its results, till it matures, there's always that potential when it meets the conditions to bring forth the fruits. In fact, even like the suttas, I think, they also speak of in somewhat metaphorical language and use the term seeds, not in quite the sense of the Yogacara school, which takes seeds in a very doctrinaire, philosophical sense, but just metaphorically to say that when one does good deeds, it's like planting good seeds. When one does bad deeds, it's like planting bad seeds. Okay, let's first take Ed, Yong, and Ming. Second tone, right? Ming. No, I'm just trying to get the Chinese tone. The second tone, rising tone. So my ear was pretty good when you said it yesterday.
Bhante, thank you. I've been trying to get a handle on or come to grips with most of what I've heard in this process-freed material. Not with the generalities of it so much as a cause and effect relationship. I mean, the Buddha was prophetic. I mean, that's an element of modern science, for example, causes and effects. Not so much with that, and that there's a moral imperative that drives some whatever it might be in the future. That's the generality. But the specifics I'm having trouble coming to grips with.
I think put the microphone a little closer.
Closer.
Okay.
I'm having trouble coming to grips with the specifics, simply because they are extremely detailed and in many ways quite linear. I don't know how, quite linear. I mean, you go up the moral scale, and there are performance standards in some way up for the moral scale. And I don't know how somebody decided there are 168 hells. That's a very difficult thing to come up with. We can say that mental states are somehow associated with what will happen in the future. That's fine. But I wondered if some of this, the first question is, I wondered if some of this is an attempt by the early framers to make a system that is compatible with existing thought in northern India at the time. The Brahminic or Vedic traditions, for example, have that sort of as a thing. And it may be that's question number one. With regard to cause and effect, I notice happily...
Let us take one question at a time.
Fire.
Because sometimes I forget the first question when somebody asks the second question. I think I pretty much covered that point this morning when I said that it seems that the specific details of the cosmology, to some extent, are intended to, on the one hand, to conform to those which were prominent in Indian culture at the time of the Buddha, and also at the same time to subsume them under the Buddha's teaching, so that the Buddha's teaching then becomes a superior container for these ideas.
Yeah.
Like at the village level in northern India, there would have been, as there still continues today, belief in beings like the yakshas, gnomes that dwell in the forest, maybe nagas, yakshas, nagas, kumbundas, gandharvas. So, by assigning these beings to the lowest realm, the lowest of the 6 sense-sphere heavenly worlds, the Buddha incorporates them within his own teaching, and yet ensures that they have a subordinate role, that they're not, the focus of the higher spiritual life. Then similarly with the Tavatimsa heavenly world, so Indra, the chief of the Vedic deities, comes to be the chief of the Tavatimsa Deva world, and he becomes a devotee of the Buddha. Then the Brahmins aspire for rebirth, for union with Brahma, for the company of Brahma to get reborn. Their aspiration is to be reborn in the Brahma world. So the Buddha has the lowest of the lowest tier in the fine material realm is actually the Brahma world with 3 divisions, and there's not just one great Brahma there, but the whole multiplicity of Brahmic deities.
Yeah.
But the fact that the Buddha's texts incorporate these different classes of beings into these realms doesn't mean, at least for me, that there aren't beings that correspond to them. But maybe it's just seen that there are beings of various types which are testified to even by Celtic folklore, Teutonic, Germanic folklore, maybe some of the African folklore, East Asian, maybe Japanese folklore. They'll testify to the existence of beings of this sort. And so the Buddhist texts are looking at these beings through the perspective, through the categories in which they were understood in northern India, whereas the Celts or the Teutons or people in Africa or people in East Asia will have their own designations for them.
Yeah. And of course, as I understand it, the Zoroastrians in neighboring Persia, ultimately neighboring Persia, also adopted, let's say, Indra as a very high level of God. Well, I did hear that go by, but I wasn't sure I interpreted you correctly when you said it, and I guess I did. The second question has to do with the cause and effect relationship. Yeah. And the thing that the saying or the teaching that brought this really to mind has to do with the powerful karma, particularly the material part of it, the material provisions. And I can see how karma, as we're told, it enters a newborn, or a newly conceived being, could influence the sense facilities. The sense facilities develop during the course of gestation. And I can even see how the karma could affect what is called the heart base, because the facility that I believe reflects the heart base sits up here. And we know that babies are born with many more neurons than they'll have only a couple of years later. I mean, we lose neurons tremendously over the first few years of our life. They're selected out. So you could say, okay, maybe karma could do that. I have no idea how karma can determine the gender of a newborn, because that is determined by the union of 2 separate things, and the karma doesn't get in to this. The consciousness does not get into this newborn until after that decision has been made. So I don't see how that happened. On the other hand, these people put together a very, very sophisticated and detailed model of how the human personality interacts with the world, and cascaded that into certain results, both here and there. And they didn't know about genetics.
Yeah.
So my question is, did they sort of fill in the blanks with something that was acceptable at their time and their place 25 or 2,000 years ago?
I would think that a lot of these ideas are quite unique to the Buddhists and weren't shared by, to my knowledge, by the Brahminic systems that were contemporary with the Buddha. But again, were not shared in common. So they seem to have been ideas that developed in the Buddhist fold. But I'm going to have to ask, that a lot of other people have questions.
Okay, but I want to. I mean, this one is kind of important because it gives me an approach to how I interpret this material.
Okay.
And if it's unique to the Buddha, then let me respectfully say that, particularly using the gender of a child as the example, that they didn't know what caused the gender of a child, but they had to come up to something for this very sophisticated, detailed, and in many ways lovely model that they created.
Yeah.
They just filled in the blanks for something they didn't. We do that all the time, even today.
Yeah, though I would say that, okay, what determines the gender of a child? We would say the chromosomes. But why is it that particular chromosomes come together to form either a female or a male? And so a Buddhist explanation would be quite reasonable, that it's the karmic force from the being that's passed away that determines whether this being that's just been conceived is going to become a male or a female. Okay, I think we had Yong, and didn't I have somebody else? You. Oh, Ming, that's right. Ming, okay, second phone.
It's my turn? Okay, thank you. I hope this question will help everybody. Because this morning we eat rice soup, and this lunch we eat rice. And this morning you also mentioned the karma over rice. That really make me think. I think today I probably eat 500 rice. And think about the seed of those rice may come from seed after seed, may pass in for thousands or millions of years. If you're tracing back, because today we eat rice, they have seed. The seed before it, it's, I don't know they call rice or what, but it also has seed. And the seed passed on from long time. Now today we still have rice to eat. Then that karma is so different. Today we eat 500 of them, but some rice seed can pass its gene for long time. Yeah. And then the karma is so complex and then so indefinite, I will say. And then I read the book, like page 205, and then the defunct karma or something, and then maybe immediately effective karma or subsequently effective karma or indefinitely effective karma. And then the last thing is defect karma. We all don't want bad karma.
They all what?
We don't want bad karma, right? We want bad karma to be defunct. And then, is there something we can do about it? Or what type of bad karma can be defunct? I mean, and...
how does the karma become defunct?
Yes, and is there some way to defunct? Because from a piece of something become a rice, we just eat it, and then it won't pass on. So there are so many opportunities. So I think they must provide, some way so bad karma can do not manifest.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is, in other words, how do we prevent the bad karma from gaining the opportunity to ripen? Generally, the way to prevent the bad karma from getting the opportunity to ripen is by consistently and persistently doing good karma. It's not possible completely to prevent bad karma from ripening, because some karmas are so strong they have to ripen. Even if you remember, in the afternoon I told a story about Mahamoggallana, the Buddha's chief disciple. So he had such powerful merits for many, many lives, but because he had, this bad karma from the distant past, so that had the tendency to ripen, and so it found its opportunity and took his life. And even the Buddha, according to the story from a long time ago when he was pounding the head of the fish, he created unwholesome karma, so when he became the Buddha, he still had headaches from time to time. So all we can do is to prevent the bad karma from ripening is to do as much good karma as possible. I know in the Chinese tradition they have the repentance ceremony, Chan Wei. So one repents all of the bad karma one has done in the past. It's a very beautiful ceremony. Yeah, I think we have it here actually in 2 weeks, yeah. Emperor Liang. Yeah, starting...
We can get rid of all of our karma then?
No, but you're supposed to, by participating, you generate wholesome karma that will function like it's something like a sponge to keep, or insulation to keep the bad karma from ripening. Okay, Yong?
Thank you, Bhante. How does then the collective karma, talking about the global warming, let's say, right? So we all kind of have this collective karma that even with wholesome people and everyone will suffer from these consequences. So how does is there any kind of mention? Is it the same as the individual karma that's displayed here? Or how does the collective karma comes into any understanding? Because remember when Jung talked about a collective consciousness or some sort, is how does and how do those affect in the other spheres as well? So I'm just curious about, because when Buddha talked to Ananda said, "Oh, half of the holy life is living with good friends," and Buddha then said, "No, Ananda, you're wrong. It's the whole of holy life."
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how does this collective karma then? Is there anything that you can? Is there applicable to the Abhidhamma, or is
there what?
An application to Abhidhamma, to use the Abhidhamma, using the Abhidhamma as a kind of a subjective, individual reference, as well as can that be applied as a collective kind of? Have you thought about that, or
I mean, it's always framed the Abhidhamma teaching in terms of like individual actions and results.
Right.
But one could, just through a little exercise of the imagination, one could understand how it can apply on a collective scale when human beings... I'm not sure that, say, the global warming is what we would call a karmic result in the technical sense, but it's the effect of unwise behavior on human beings over a long period of time. Maybe we could be excused for this up to about the early 1980s, even though it was understood by scientists, the phenomenon of global warming, but the public was not warned about it. I said the phenomena of global warming was understood by scientists even going back to the early 20th century, but it was never became public knowledge till about the late 1980s. And then once it was announced and became public, then all of the fossil fuel corporations and their allies started getting together and sort of sending out lots of disinformation, misinformation, deceptive information in order to mislead people about the reality of global warming. Finished. Okay, Sam, Douglas, and Ravi.
Bhante, when you were talking about Chaitanya,
Yeah.
You said at the end it's repeat, repeat, repeat. The 3 R's.
Those are results.
But once the karma is matured, is
Yeah.
it, isn't like, is it, I don't know, is it, what's the word? Like, is it resolved or does it go?
I see. Once the karma produces its results, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
What happens to it?
Right.
Okay, once the karma produces its result, it's said here that it loses its productive function. It won't produce any more results directly, but it's said that the karma could still exercise the other 3 functions, though it would seem hard to see how it could exercise the function of destructive karma after it produces its result. But it seems that it could probably continue to function as either supportive karma or obstructive karma.
And one more question, it's a quick one. Ming was talking about various lifetimes and
Yeah.
our karma and where it's stored. But
Yeah.
is the stream of consciousness,
Yeah.
it has to be interrupted. If not, that's similar to
Yeah.
the idea of soul or permanent self, no? The stream of
Yeah.
consciousness,
Yeah.
that has to be interrupted in between rebirths.
Well, this brings us back to the topic, I think I discussed it a little bit yesterday, that there are the 2 alternative views of what happens after death. One is the view which is supported by the Theravada Abhidhamma, which is that of instantaneous rebirth. So one moment the death consciousness occurs, the next moment the rebirth consciousness occurs. So the consciousness flows on in an uninterrupted continuum. Now, in the case of the schools that accept the idea of some kind of break between one life and the next, it still seems that the stream, to my understanding, that the stream of consciousness and the personal identity continues on. But in this case, we would say that, okay, let me just give again the case of not taking the Buddha schools, but the case of those individuals who have some recollection of having died in their previous life and what happens in between before they took rebirth again as a human being. So they say that they find or experience their consciousness getting sort of disconnected from the body. Then they find themselves as a kind of spirit being, still with the subtle physical body, but they're now like hovering around in the air and able to move over long distances just at the breakneck speed. They don't have a clear sense of the passage of time, but they still see themselves with the physical body, but it's a subtle physical body, and they're still perceiving, like they see their relatives lamenting at their funeral. And so apparently there has to be, for this to take place, a continuity of consciousness, and that consciousness is they're still identifying themselves as the same person, but they come to the recognition, now, now I'm dead. And then they move around until they find a particular couple that they're attracted to, and then at a certain point they lose consciousness, and then when they regain consciousness, they're a baby out in the human world again.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's no actual suspension of the flow of consciousness in between lives. It's just the difference between the 2 points of view is whether death is immediately followed by a rebirth into a new realm of existence, or whether there is some kind of intermediate state in which the being has a kind of spirit-like existence. Yeah, I would actually assume that when there's to be a rebirth from the human realm into any of the heavenly realms, or on the negative side into the hell realm, it's instantaneous. Because those beings can be reborn without having to depend upon parental sexual intercourse. But in the case of a human rebirth or an animal rebirth, where the right conditions have to come together, I don't see that those right conditions will necessarily be present exactly at the moment that the dying being passes away. Yeah, the bhavanga is the stream in a way. Yeah. Okay, this is shan shan, right? Shan shan. First tone. Shan shan. Shan shan.
Thank you. Thank you, Bante. I'm just curious, it's kind of similar to Yong's question, actually. I'm just curious to know if the Abhidhamma or any of the commentaries has mentioned the notion of, beings helping each other on a karmic level. For instance, because I think we've been talking about, that the karmic, producing actions that and then we produce karma, and then, the result might ripen during one lifetime or, during the next or the following lifetimes. So, but it just seems to me that there's, in many cultures, the notion of, I guess, atonement from, Christianity. Because, if there's no such way for, say, one individual to help another being on a karmic level, then I guess, the whole notion that Jesus Christ kind of died for the sins of human beings, you know what I mean? So I'm just curious, as to...
So let me see if I understand you. That are you asking, is there any possibility for when
another being to bear the result
to bear the results of the karma.
Right.
According to Buddhism, it's not possible for another being to bear the results of the karma of somebody, say, who is passed away or still living. Mm-hmm. But it's possible for people to help others karmically in this way. This is the way it's done, and this is very widespread in Buddhist traditions. You can sit down if you like. Okay, it's when, say a person, a relative or a friend passes away, and then we want to help that person in their onward movement, through their next life. What is done is to do meritorious deeds, special meritorious deeds, and then dedicate the merit of those deeds to the person who has passed away. Now, it's not possible literally to, even though we use the common expression, transference of merit, but one doesn't actually take like your stock of merit, like it's money in your bank account, and write a little check and give it to that person and transfer it to their karmic bank account. But what one does is one does meritorious deeds, and then mentally one invites that person to recognize that these meritorious deeds have been done on their behalf and to rejoice in the meritorious deeds. And if those beings have been, that person who has passed away has been reborn in a particular realm of existence where they can witness what is going on in the human world, and they need merit from their surviving human relatives and friends, then they rejoice in the merit, and by rejoicing, they acquire merit in turn. And then that merit helps them in the new existence. So this is done I know because I lived in Sri Lanka for a long time, so this is always done in Sri Lanka when somebody in the family passes away. the people, the surviving relatives on, how does it work, the 7th day, 1 month, and then 3 months, and then every year on the anniversary of the death, they'll arrange what they call a Sangika Dana. That's an offering of a meal to the monastic Sangha. So they'll invite numbers of monks to their home. They'll offer a meal, robes, other requisites to the monks. And then they have a very nice little ceremony where they have a small bowl of water in a plate and then a cup, and then they pour the water from the bowl into the cup till it overflows the cup and flows into the plate in which the cup is placed. And this is supposed to symbolize that the merit is passing from us to the persons who have passed away, so that it overflows from us to those who have passed away. And then other people, one could do many other meritorious deeds. Even before doing it, one makes the determination in the mind, I'm going to do this meritorious deed on behalf of such and such a deceased person. Then one does the deed, then one dedicates the merit. Also, what's done very often in the Buddhist countries is for people to have Dharma books published in the name of a deceased relative. And then they'll have either at the first page or a back page, they'll have the merit of this publication is dedicated to our beloved mother, beloved father. And okay, Douglas.
Thank you, Bhante. A few of us were talking after last lecture, and a question arose. The question that was circulating amongst us was how to understand a wrong view as a unwholesome karma, as one of the 10 unwholesome karmas, because the nature of the volition involved in a view seemed somewhat different than the nature of volition in the other 9. So if could you...
Oh yeah, now I see the point. Yeah, this gets a little technical. What is said in the case of the first 7 courses of karma, that what generates the karma is the volition. Of course, it's the volition that expresses itself through bodily action or through speech. But in the case of the last 3, it is the covetousness itself that creates the karma, and it is the ill will itself that creates the karma, and it's the adoption or holding to the wrong view itself that creates the karma. Okay, we have Ravi.
Bhante, it's similar to that question, but a little different. In Buddhism, we have the Tilakkana, Anicca, Dukkha, Anatma. Now, in the, I believe that is part of the right view, but I didn't hear that being mentioned in this Abhidhamma text.
It's what?
The Abhidhamma text that we did not have under right view. Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatma.
Okay, so the question is that this section on karma, is that where it's speaking about right view, today. It doesn't mention the right view of impermanence, suffering, non-self.
Right. Which I thought fundamental to the Dhamma.
Okay, this is because when discussing the courses of wholesome karma, the right view of insight goes beyond what is necessary to constitute wholesome karma. So anybody who has the right view of that our actions produce some kind of consequences, call them karmic results, retribution, happiness or suffering through the working of an ethical law, has the right view that's a course of wholesome karma. But the view of impermanence, suffering, non-self, that becomes operative in a different domain. This is not the domain of wholesome karma, but this is the domain of the practice leading to liberation. And so that will come into the Abhidhamma, not in this chapter, which is concerned with karma, but in the last chapter, whereas the discussion of the path of cultivation, the path of developing concentration meditation and insight meditation. There we'll find the right view of impermanence, suffering, non-self. But to get that, you have to mark your calendars now for Labor Day weekend next year. Then you'll be full to your head with anicca, dukkha, anatta. I think, Jishu, you have a question?
班的我刚才有听到班的有讲说那个中医
你要用
生
英文。你就在美国很多年，还不敢说英文，你可以。
You should.
我很笨的美国人，
You should
有的
speak.
时候我说中文，你要说英文。
I speak Chinese sometimes,
Okay,
so you
okay.
should speak
My
English
translation?
sometimes too.
Okay, you speak
刚才已
Chinese.
经翻译了吧 OK it's over
No, you speak Chinese. Bo-Wei will translate for you.
Yes 班的我的问题是这样，因为刚才有听到班的讲是中阴身嘛我想知道中阴身是哪一道的众生
Okay, Bante mentioned the intermediate state,
Yeah.
and what I like to know is to which realm does it belong?
Which realm
Realm, yeah,
does the intermediate state belong?
right.
The intermediate state doesn't belong to any realm, but it is, the way I understand it, a kind of period between the end of one lifespan and the beginning of the next lifespan. Now, some people say, in fact, my own teacher, my own ordination teacher held this view, Venerable Ananda Maitreya, because he was familiar with these reports of people who have passed away and claim that they were sort of moving in some kind of nebulous realm before they took a rebirth back into the human realm. So he said, because he upheld also the sort of strict Theravada view, so he said that this must have been a rebirth in the Preta realm, except that the way the texts depict the Preta realm, it's a realm, a miserable realm. The beings, the Pretas, are supposed to have intense hunger and thirst, which they can't satisfy, whereas the reports of people in this intermediate state, it's kind of neither pleasant nor painful. It's just like if I'm a passenger in a car or in a bus going from New York to Boston, I'm just sitting there. I'm not joyful, I'm not miserable, I'm just sitting in the bus waiting for the bus to get from New York to Boston. Excuse me? Yeah, but the way the word Gandhabba is used in that particular passage, it doesn't seem to be indicating a being from the Gandhava sphere of existence. Because the Gandhabas, if one looks in the Samyutta Nikaya, are described as a kind of earthbound deity that dwells in flowering trees, trees with fruit trees, fragrant flowers, because the word Gandharva, the word Gandha means fragrance, and Arva is some way connected with eating. So it's things which eat or subsist on pleasant fragrances. Okay, our fascia.
班德阿弥陀佛。那我想就刚刚这个问题，中医生的问题，请教您。上次我有提到一个业相的问题，业相。
My question is to follow up the intermediate state. Last time, my question was about the sign of karma.
Yeah.
那中医生算不算是业相的一种？
Is in the intermediate state one kind of the sign of karma?
Well, you see, this becomes a bit problematic because, according to the Theravada Abhidhamma, the rebirth moment is supposed to come immediately after the death moment. So as the person is dying, then they will perceive the sign of karma or the sign of future destiny. But apparently, if there is some intermediate stage, it doesn't square very well. Perhaps we could say that the sign of destiny is when that person or the being that's sort of floating around in that intermediate stage, when it perceives the couple that is going to become their parents in the next life, maybe that will function as the sign of karma or the sign of destiny. Or maybe just before they pass away, or just at the moment that they pass away from the intermediate stage, perhaps then a sign of destiny or a sign of karma will appear to them. These are things that that I don't know.
等一下，还没有问完。那现在意外
Did you get my answer?
什么？
Were you, Bo-Wei, you were translating my answer? Okay, so you heard my answer. Okay.
所以他现在意外死亡的人很多，意外的伤害很多，那他们会经过这个业相吗？
So those people nowadays, many people die of accident.
Yeah.
And for those people who die of accident, because of accident, will they have this kind of sign of karma?
Okay, I think I understand the point. Yeah. Even if a person dies very quickly, it said, if somebody even is shot by a gun, so they have no expectation of dying, but suddenly some gunman comes and shoots them, and the bullet goes straight for the heart, so that they're dying instantaneously. But even in that flash split second before death, one of these signs will appear, either the karma, the sign of karma, or the sign of the future destiny. That's what it said. I remember my teacher told me that even if somebody takes a fly swatter and swats a fly on the window or the wall, the fly will have its sign of karma, sign of future destiny, will appear in that split second before the fly dies. Okay, again, the memory of names is Chris, that's right, okay.
Bhante, I was wondering, in the case of a being who has passed away and is going into the next rebirth, the parents, the couple that you talk about,
yeah.
Let's say the baby's born and then that child grows up and it causes the parents a lot of trouble and there's a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Is that bad karma that the parents have as well as the child? Like maybe it's physical, maybe the child has the physical problems and the parents have to endure taking care of this child the rest of their life, or other kinds of trouble like whatever, drugs or anything like that?
I would say that it's some working out of a karma involving all three of them, that there's some kind of concatenation, interconnections of karma that would go back maybe through karmic connections in past lives, so that has brought them together in this life, and some past, karmic reasons will explain why the child that's grown up is now causing trouble and difficulty for the parents. And so it's an opportunity in a way for the parents to grow and develop if they're able to deal with their child in a wholesome way. Jean, okay, yeah. Jean and Joan.
Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate now, but I keep wondering, what about non-self, if there's a continuity of consciousness?
What about non-self?
Yes.
If there is continuity?
Yes.
Okay. So the two are not incompatible. Non-self means that within us this collection of five aggregates, or within this collection of mental and material phenomena, there's no permanent, subsisting, unchanging self that remains always the same. But consciousness is, we call it a stream, a continuum, which is always changing. It's moments of consciousness arising and passing away. And this continuum of consciousness goes on, from within this life, from the moment of conception to the moment of death. Even here, there's no self in the sense of a permanent subject, but there's a continuity of consciousness from the moment of conception to the moment of death. But this continuity of consciousness is always arising on the basis of what we call the same physical body, even though the body is a process of physical, material events. Now at death, this physical body can no longer function as a support for the stream of consciousness. And so the physical body perishes, it dies, but the stream of consciousness, as long as there's still the craving for more existence, will pass on and then latch on to another physical organism, which is just common to being, and then it will take that as its vehicle of development. Okay, so this was Jean, now Joan. And then unless there's any urgent question after this.
Bante, listening to what Sister just said regarding the intermediate state.
Yeah, have to project your voice.
I'm wondering if thank you, Sister. As a result of what Sister just said in her question and what we discussed earlier regarding the storage of karma, I'm wondering if the karma is possibly stored in the stream of consciousness, the bhavanga, and it gets transferred through the rebirth linking consciousness. That's because I'm wondering if it continues to exist in a latent form, and if nothing happens to trigger the karma from manifesting, then does it get transferred after the death consciousness into the rebirth linking consciousness?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then, so it is still there. So all the time you keep adding more. I don't know.
Okay. This seems to be a good point. As I said earlier, within the Abhidhamma commentaries that I'm familiar with, the Abhidhamma commentaries that I'm familiar with don't speak about the bhavanga as performing the storage function. But it seems to me that perhaps it is the case that there has to be some way in which these both memories of our present experiences are preserved and some way in which our karma is preserved. So one way is just to see it as, I think I used that simile in the afternoon, the cloud drive, is that what it's called? So it's a non-material, well, so that it's not really stored any place. It's just that the potential is created, and as long as that potential is there, the memories can recur at a later time, and the karma will ripen and produce its results. Another way to see it, perhaps, is that even though the commentaries don't speak about the bhavanga as having a deep storage function, but maybe we could just posit that the bhavanga does have that storage function, even though it's not spoken about in the texts. In that way, the bhavanga starts to come very close to the concept of the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness of the Yogacara system. In fact, even I think Asanga, who is like the original founder of the Yogacara school, said that that which we call the alaya vijnana, that he referred to the Theravadins by the name that they were called by that period, I think the Mahaviharans, that's what they call the bhavanga consciousness. So it could be that if we want to see memory impressions and karmic impressions stored someplace, we could posit that there is a kind of like deep layer of the bhavanga in which those impressions are stored. So it's largely a matter of interpretation. Okay, I think it's time. Okay, let's take, if it can be a short, quickly answered question. Tsering.
Bhante, I don't know where I have heard of this, but I know that somewhere it's written that a moment when an ant climbs from the tip of your nose to the end of the nose, very split of a second. That moment of concentration or awareness or whatever is equivalent to, let's say, one life of, let's say, doing good deeds or generosity and so on.
It's equivalent to one life of what?
Is more than one life of doing good deeds or generosity or...
I don't quite understand the saying.
No, within a split of a second, that's the time when an ant climbs from the tip of the nose to the end of the nose. If you're able to do the concentration or meditation, the good is equivalent to 100 years of life of giving. I don't know.
Okay, there might be a saying like that. I'm not familiar with it. Okay, I think it's time to let the discursive thinking mind quiet down a bit.